report button, and yeah, I like the other screen better. So let me see what happened to it. I think this will work. Okay. So anyway, this session's topic, and between Tuesday and Thursday, this is the only recording I'm gonna do. And at this point, I do not know how long will be, but it's all about proteins and amino acids. Why do I have proteins and amino acids together? Do you know the answer to this question? That's because proteins are polymers of amino acids. That means, amino acids hold hand to hands together, and some of them are just a few amino acids. Some of them are hundreds and thousands of amino acids, depending on how big the protein is. Okay, and so I always told students that the protein molecule just amazing. Okay, is really between um, the mechanism between our genetics and our characteristics. I can explain that later. But because we have about 20 amino acids, different type of amino acids, and then that give protein as a compound, as a class of compound, so many variety. Okay, so as you can imagine that you have the building block. You have 20 different kind of building blocks. Okay, so you can build all kind of just like a puzzle. You can build all kind of protein molecule. Okay, um, some definition. So proteins are compounds composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. It's a long chain of amino acids. Okay, and so amino acids, by the name you can tell they have amino group, they have acidic group. Some of you took organic chemistry, you should remember some of that. Um, but anyway, so the amino acid is the building block for proteins. Okay, so what I have slides on, I said, well, proteins are life molecules. Okay, the reason I say that is that life is not possible without protein. Okay, um, later time in this recording, we're going to talk about why that is. Because proteins are part of our structure. Protein are also enzymes. Protein just does a lot of stuff in our body, in our cells, and in our body. Just amazing molecules. Okay. And then that picture I just put up there just to give the slide some color. But it is a colorful depiction of a protein molecule. But that's just only one protein molecule. There are unlimited number of kinds of protein they can put together, but they're not put together randomly, and that's why it's so amazing about life itself. It's just amazing number of protein molecules. So this one, I don't know what particular molecule this is that you have, these are chains of protein um, molecules. Go back, go back. You won't go back. Okay, that's okay. Um, you only go forward. It's not going back. That's okay. So let's start with amino acids first. Okay, so amino acids, its name says there's an amino group, as you see on the picture, and that's a nitrogen containing. the on the left side hand side, if I go, okay, see if I can do this. Okay, here, yeah, that's good. You know, this is the amino group, amino part of the amino acid, and this is the carboxylic group. You know, the acid. You know, that's what make the organic compound the acid, is because the C, there's a double bonds O and there's OH. Do you recognize those? Those of you that took organic chemistry. You know, chemistry is such a fascinating subject. You know, at one time, I sometimes refer myself as a food chemist uh, because of the classes and the research I did. But what amazing about amino acids is right here. Okay, it's the variable group, because that's what gives the amino acid variety. That's how there are 20 kinds of amino acids. Now, there are more than, and there are a lot of other kinds of amino acids you could synthesize together. But you know, in nature, there are about 20 kinds of amino acids that's most common in cells and in living organisms. Okay, and so that's and so the other interesting thing is that this amino group can hold hands with the acidic group of the next amino acid, and so this acidic group, the carboxylic group over here, will hold hands with the amino group. So you have just long chains. That's why you have long chains of amino acids. And then sometimes these chains turns and turns. There's alpha helix structure, and some protein, especially those bigger ones, the structure is quite complicated. Okay, so move on to the next slides. Okay, the next concept is very important for you. Is some of these amino acids are called essential amino acids. That means our body either do not make them at all or not make them in enough quantity. And that's those are essential amino acids. And these are the amino acids has to come from the food we eat. Okay, and so you do need to spend some time and take a look at these. And so the essential amino acids include histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine. Okay, and so a trick that I had when I took nutrition classes when I was in graduate school, HEAL MPT TV. Okay, so this is 9 of them is considered as essential. Okay, so HEAL is histidine, I is isoleucine, L is leucine, and the other L is lysine, the M is methionine, the P is phenylalanine, and the T is threonine, and another T is tryptophan, and then that V is valine. Okay, valine. Okay, so those are the 9 essential amino acids. So when they're essential one, there will be non-essential ones. And then you'll say, well, if they're non-essential, why do we need to talk about it? Well, because all of them are part of protein structure. And so if you count them, there should be 11. Okay, so alanine, arginine, asparagine, aspartic acid, cysteine, glutamine, glutamic acid, glycine, proline, serine, tyrosine. Okay, and you notice is that cysteine and tyrosine, they're underlined because they are referred as conditional essential. For example, these can be considered as initial amino acids for children. Okay, when a person's young, they do need to get these amino acids from the food, and their body does not make enough dose for this to be non-essential. Okay, and the reason they're non-essential is that your body can make this from other amino acids. Okay, and so so make sure that you take a look at this list. And just some of the stories that with these amino acids. A lot of these amino acids not only that important for nutrition, but it's also for related with food too. Have you guys heard about MSG? What is MSG? I'll read it out. Monosodium glutamate. So this is actually a form of glutamic acid, okay? And so, you know what MSG is? This is what referred as a flavor enhancer. Flavor enhancer. What that means is that they themselves do not have flavor, but it gives the food, other components of food, enhance their flavor and make the food taste better. So, some of you probably notice that a lot of Asian restaurants, they will post out there on the restaurant saying no MSG. So now you know what MSG is. So MSG essentially is a sodium salt of glutamic acid, glutamic acid, okay, monosodium glutamate. All right, so let's move on. And so the recording is about 12 minutes long. We had to move at a reasonable speed before we get this recording too long. Okay, so and the next slide is about the protein structure. As I said, proteins are such amazing molecules. They actually have 4-level structure. The first level is that these different amino acids connect together. How they connect together. So this is what all the time we call primary sequencing. Just who stands by who. And then that's the primary structure, okay? And then the secondary structure is talk about how these chain will fold themselves. Some of them they call alpha helix. Goes just like that, and some they are beta sheets. Okay, so that how they associate with each other after they have that chain is give the protein the secondary structure. And the tertiary structure is really the further folding. How they, all these things are not random, because the primary structure determines secondary structure, and the secondary structure determines the tertiary structure. And so, the third one is, after you have the alpha helix, okay, and then and how they refold, they'll fold again. For example, you could have alpha helix like that, and then another one like that, another one like that, and so this is the third level of structure. And then the fourth level structure is how the subunit associate with each other, so their protein could be, this folded this way, this way, this way, sometimes there's three of them together. And so these are three different protein molecule subunits associated with each other. And so the protein structure is quite complicated. It's because of just amazing stuff that's going on with within the cell or within the organism. And that's why I call it life protein, life molecule. Without protein, there is no life. All right. That's why I'm so excited. So excited about the protein lecture. Are you excited? I cannot tell. Okay, another concept is protein denaturation. Okay, what denaturation means is that DE, that means against or away, moving away from naturation. That means it changes from the nature status. That's called denaturation. Okay, so the definition of protein denaturation is any change of protein structure caused by heat, strong acid, strong base, alcohol, or other elements. So it's a structure change. And then you probably ask a question. You say, well, is protein denatured good or bad? It depends. What's the protein for? For example, with the proteins, the storage protein is for food purposes. Majority of the time that we need to denature first before it can become digestible. Okay, and so the digestible protein oftentimes is that easy to denature by our stomach acid or other elements or during cooking. Okay, and so every one of you, right now we're kind of talk about in the abstract sense, what denaturation is, but in reality that you experience this every day. For example, at breakfast you fry an egg, and so that's the heat denaturing the protein, because especially egg white. Egg yolk is included, there's plenty of protein, but egg white is almost pure protein. I say almost because I want to be technically correct, but the majority of that is protein and water. And so what happens when you cook the eggs? It gel. That gelling process is denaturation. Okay. The other aspects of protein denaturation is that the denaturation oftentimes causes the protein to lose its ability to do things. For example, if the protein is an enzyme, then if you denature it, it's not going to work anymore. Okay, and this is not necessarily bad. And sometimes, especially the nutrition example is that when you cook, you want to denature some of the enzymes. For example, that with frozen vegetables. And there's a lot of enzyme in fresh vegetables that causes flavor changes. So what the process will do, they will go through a process called blanching. Blanching. So this is essentially heat to denature the enzymes. And so these enzymes can causes off flavor. And so that's why the quality of these canned vegetables is a lot better than many years ago. Is because of this technology. Very simple thing is that you blanch it before you cook it, and that means you flash heat it and denature all the protein, and so the enzymes will stop working to create those frozen vegetable flavor. So this applied to the canned food, especially for frozen vegetables. The frozen vegetable quality is a lot better than years before. Okay, now let's move on to talk about the digestion and absorption of protein. Okay, first let's talk about what happens to in the mouth. Okay, so protein. Let's just ways about things in general. Even though that we talk about this in a chemistry sense, but what food? Think about a food that has a lot of protein. Most of you will probably associate pork, chicken, or beef, the meat products as protein. But then there's plenty of others. For example, the liquid milk has protein in it. The eggs that we talk about, just almost everything that has some protein in it. But meat certainly is a concentrated amount of protein. And then on the plant sources, the legumes are protein. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens in the stomach. Um, all of you know that stomach produce a lot of acids. Okay, you find that out when maybe at one time you ate too much at some delicious dinner that your mom and dad cooked, and so you have acid reflux. Maybe you're too young to have that, but it does happen, and then oh, where's that acid come from? It's so burning my esophagus, or sometimes even you have an acid reflux, go back all the way to your throat, and you had a burning sensation. That's because it's your stomach. That's your stomach's job to produce all kind of acids. That acid part of the job is to hydrolyze the protein. But this is only the beginning. So the pepsin, that's the enzyme, the protein hydrolyzing enzyme. The protein hydrolyzing enzyme, the general term is called protease. Remember we talked about ASE, this is the enzyme. Protease is the enzyme that hydrolyzes protein. Okay, remember that. What does protease do? Protease hydrolyzes protein. So pepsin is one of the first protease that start working on a protein that we take in as food. And so pepsin is the protease that's secreted by stomach. Okay, so between the acid and a lot of these enzymes cannot survive the acidity, but pepsin can. And actually, pepsin has to be it's not very active without acid. So that's the strangest thing. But we don't want to get into too much of that, too much details in that. Okay, this is what happened in the stomach, and what happened in the small intestine. Going back to the video that we watched, is that you have the food will pass down from the stomach to the small intestine. That's where a lot of absorption occurs. Okay, and so first you have trypsin and chymotrypsin. Okay, so these are two more proteases that working on the protein. Okay, so this is a project at chopping down the protein molecule. The goal is that all the way to amino acids. Okay, and so another word I want you to understand, polypeptides. What is polypeptides? First of all, peptides is something that they discovered in peg, that means in the stomach. That's just a short chain of amino acid. It's a product from hydrolysis, protein hydrolysis. Okay, and polypeptides is a little bit bigger than peptides. And so in the small intestine, the hydrolysis, the breaking down process continue to happen, and then they will to a smaller pieces, dipeptides, tripeptides, and amino acids, all the way to amino acids. Okay, And so these are the piece of protein gets smaller and smaller all the way to amino acids. And then this, when it become amino acid, this is when they are getting to the bloodstream. I'm just talking about in a very general sense, is that this is the passive absorption that the amino acid will cross from the small intestine membrane to the blood circulation system. But sometimes, you do have our body does have unique capability to actively it could take in some bigger protein molecules. But as a general, is that protein need to break down to be absorbed. And so, what do our bodies do with the amino acids that we observe? We observe from eating the food. Number one, these amino acids will go to a different part of our body, and then they will put back together to protein. But it's not randomly. So I'm going to talk to you about how our body, our cells do that. But in general, it's a fascinating process. Okay? But keep that in mind, and then I'll come back to that concept later. So, but anyway, these proteins are put back together for different purposes, and some of the purposes for growth. Okay, and so if you look at the cell structure, there's so many parts of the cells needs protein. Okay, so that protein has to come from somewhere. Where? You're from the amino acids that you observe, and your body put it back together as protein as the body needs. Okay, so different cells needs different protein, and it's just an amazing process, a life process within the cell and with our organs. Another example is called collagen. Collagen is a large protein molecule, and this is part of our structure. Our bones before the bones, there were collagens. Okay, so the collagen is actually the initial structure for the bone to get minerals on there. So bone is really mineralized collagen. Is the collagen that getting calcium or phosphorus and then keep depositing those on the collagen molecule that eventually become teeth and bones. Okay, so it's the foundation. Okay, so that's why populations who have poor nutrition, protein nutrition, people do not grow very tall. Okay, again, I'm using myself as an example again. Is that you just look the height of my son and myself. You know that I experienced malnutrition because he's about almost a foot taller than I am. Okay, because his protein nutrition status while growing up is 100 times better than what I had. Okay, so the growth is very important. So that's why for youngsters, protein nutrition is very important, and also for repair. Okay, and so collagen is used as another example, and serve as the mending material. So if you have a wounds, whether it's visible on the skin or wounds that the inside organs, collagen is what your body, your organ uses to repair stuff. Okay. Oh, did I? Yeah, I skip a slide. I cannot go back. This is crazy. Okay. Anyway, the proteins are just it's amazing molecule. They do so much stuff in our body. I think the slide I always gave is about enzymes. Protein are, all enzymes are protein. Remember this. All enzymes are protein, but now all proteins are enzyme. Right? I'm not playing a tongue twister with you here, but this is the fact, is that um, a lot of why protein is so important is because of the enzyme. Okay, an enzyme does fascinating biochemical reactions in our body. You know, hundreds of thousands and millions biochemical reaction goes on all the time. Okay, and then what catalyzes that process are these special proteins called enzymes. Okay, those ASEs, ASE. You know, there are all kind of enzymes. The enzyme that puts things together, enzyme that tear things apart, enzyme that synthesize special compounds. Um, you know, it's just amazing. You know, this is probably the time that I can tell you just a little story about why protein and enzyme is so important. You know, I have black hair, okay? And some of you do not have black hair. Some of you do, some of you have blonde hair, okay? The difference, you say, oh, it's because it's in our genes. Then my question to you, how does the gene get expressed that way? It's through enzymes, okay? So later time we'll talk about how the proteins are put together. So in my genetic code, um, my cells and my organs produce a lot of this color that make my hair black. And some of you do not have that much enzymes, so your hair a lot of lighter, okay? And some of you are blonde, some of you are other hair colors. That's because of the genes controls the amount of enzymes, the activity of enzymes, and that enzyme what determines the characteristics that we have. Okay, I don't know how much sense that make to you. If it doesn't make any sense, you can ask me during class time. Okay, now this slide talk about antibodies and the immune system, and that's the other thing is that the immune system rely on your body synthesize these group of protein molecule called antibodies. You know, the reason they call antibodies, these are the weapons that attacking antigen. You know, it is defending your body against outside invaders. Okay, and so immunology is such a exciting field right now because even with the cancer therapy, a lot of research are dealing with how you can design the antibody that the antibody going to go take care of the cancer. Okay, so there's just amazing stuff, and none of this can the mechanism can function without protein. So that's why I keep saying the protein molecule is just amazing molecule. Okay, the other aspect is proteins are hormones. Okay, so not all hormones are protein. Okay, so there are some hormones that are non-protein hormones, but then majority of the hormones are protein. So where hormone is a chemical messenger, you know, is made in the endocrine glands in our body. They travel to different parts of our body to create a response. Okay, so you already we already talked about one hormone, that's insulin. The insulin is a hormone, but insulin, the molecule itself, is protein. Okay, and it is synthesized in our pancreas, and then its goal is to go to the target tissue like liver, like muscle cells, and so that it will allow muscles and liver to store more glucose as a glycogen. Remember that discussion? And so insulin is a good example here. Okay. So we already talked about that our body will put protein together, using the amino acid. What other stuff that does our body do with amino acids? Sometimes your body convert to um, using amino acid for protein. Of course, we already talked about that. And sometimes that your body can use the amino acid to transform into other amino acid, non-essential amino acids, to synthesize other amino acids, and then put together to as a protein. And sometimes your body use amino acid to make other compounds, including some vitamins and some coenzymes are actually be made from they taking the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, nitrogen from amino acid and make new compounds. Okay, and also we did talk about that a gram of protein does give you 4 kilocalories of calorie. So this is why so the amino acids can be converted to energy. The way that your body does that is that take the amino acid, and make to glucose, and that's why called gluconeogenesis, and make the glucose can go to be stored as a glycogen and used as energy. Or if you have abundant amino acid, your body can also break down amino acids and put the energy store as fat as well. Okay, so that means if you just eat protein, there's if you eat plenty of it, you're still gonna gain weight. Okay, so because it does have energy. So weight losing or weight gaining is all about energy balance. Okay, now is the exciting part. Well, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but maybe if you took a biochemistry class or biology class, you probably already had this. Is that just the whole process is how does our cells or our the cells in our body put protein together? It start with DNA. Okay, those are the genetic code. That DNA is a deoxyribonucleic acid, and then RNA is a ribonucleic acid, RNA, DNA. Okay, so the process goes through is that when in our um, in cell, it first start with DNA, and then it goes through a transcription process. That means you make a copy of the DNA using RNA, and sometimes this refers to messenger RNA to mRNA. Okay, and then this is kind of like a mode to copy, and then um, based on the sequence of mRNA and the proteins put together. Okay, so most of you probably learned this process. So anyway, this is the reason why earlier time I said proteins are not put together randomly. Your body has a um, beautiful process to determine what kind of protein to make. It's just amazing when you look at this, um, the process that's going on in the cell. Okay, now the topic about protein quality. We talk about complete protein. What complete protein is that this is the protein that's gonna supply the good mixture of amino acids that you need in your body. Majority of the time, they are animal source of protein. Okay, protein from animal sources, they tend to be more complete than protein from plant sources or microbe sources. Okay, um, but those of you that has been on a vegetarian diet, you also understand the complementary protein concept. What this is that when you combine cereal, let's just use rice as an example, rice and beans. Okay, so rice tend to be low in lysine, and then beans tend to low in methionine, and then but if you put it together, so this the totality is actually complement each other, complement each other. That's why it's complementary protein. So hopefully that those of you that decided gone on vegetarian diet, you already learned that. Otherwise, getting a complete protein is not as easy as you think. Um, and the other quality factor is that how digestible the protein is. Okay, if the protein is not digestible, it's going through your GI tract untouched, and doesn't matter what kind of amino acids the proteins have, it's not useful for nutrition, protein nutrition. However, this is not necessarily a bad thing among the overnourished population. You understand what I mean? Is that if the protein is just not absorbed, that means you're not having that energy. But a lot of time is that the protein that resists to digestion comes from the plant sources. Okay, so remember in the very first class I talked to you about the project we're working on, how to make the soy protein more digestible and how significant that can be. But for a malnourished population, that you want the protein to be more digestible. Okay, and you either can do it in mechanical or physical ways to process the protein. The protein can be more digestible, and so you can absorb those amino acids and do something with those amino acids for good protein nutrition. Okay, and a lot of study nutrition research use egg protein as a reference. Okay, because egg protein does have very good balance on what kind of amino acid they supply, and then the digestibility is quite good. So that's why it's chosen as a reference protein. And actually, the word protein, okay, in Chinese, this word is read like this. You never thought you're going to learn writing Chinese characters from your nutrition professor. Okay, so what this means, this is egg whites. This means egg, and this is egg white. Okay, so that's because that egg protein is a known reference. And okay, so let's move on to our next slide. It's been 43 minutes already. Come on. Okay, the recommended protein intake. The recommendation is about in the Western diet we have plenty of good protein because majority of us do consume protein, animal protein sources, including meat, poultry, and dairy. They all had good protein with it, and so it's 15% of your total calorie can come from protein. In another way to recommend it is based on your body weight. Okay, and this is just in a general sense, is that so depends on your life stage, depends on your health status. 0.8 grams and not less than a gram per kilogram body weight. And for example, if you weigh, let's say 60 kilo, that's about 130 or 40 pounds. That means you need about 50 grams of protein in your daily diet. Okay, so next one. Okay, what is what happens if you do not have enough protein? And then there is difficult to pronounce words, Kwashiorkor and marasmus. Okay, these are from I think both these are from certain African languages describe the malnourished status of children. Um, and one thing common with malnutrition, protein nutrition, is infection. That's what we talk about is that a malnourished population, they're at a higher risk for dying from infectious diseases. And as a result, they probably never grow old enough to develop heart disease or cancer or diabetes. But in a normal situation, most part of the world, we don't have protein malnutrition any longer unless we have famine because of political instability, because of wars, then that can happen. But nobody should be malnourished with nutrition, protein nutrition, because as long as you have enough energy, get enough normal food, you should be okay. Okay, so you don't really have to go to Walmart buy protein powder because you do not have enough protein. But then people have other, we can talk about those issues at a later time. But people have other ideas of using protein for other purposes. I think this might be the last slides. Okay. Oh, it's been 46 minutes, so I better, the recording better worked. Otherwise, I wasted almost an hour of my time. Okay, so what happened if you had too much protein? Okay, one of your debate topic is about ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet, oftentimes low calorie, high protein, no carb. Okay, and they will push a lot of protein to your body. And this is a related topic on that phenomenon. Okay, so if you eat too much protein, just like any other energy eating nutrients, it can cause obesity because it's calorie. So the protein body weight loss again is all depends on the calorie intake and how much you spend out. Okay, so besides that, a lot of protein can cause calcium loss. Okay, so we don't get into the mechanism of that, and that has a lot to do with the metabolites from your protein. Okay, and so for the very beginning, last time we talked about carbohydrates, this is the elements it has, right? Carbohydrates, CHO. Protein has all these three plus nitrogen. Okay, and to think about this is that, when your body burn carbohydrates, what does this turn into? This turn into carbon dioxide, and H and O, this turn into water. So the end product is carbon dioxide and water. How do you get rid of that? You just breathe it out. Okay, you're open your mouth, you just breathe out carbon dioxide and also water vapor, and your body can take that water, do something else too. But when you come to protein, what are you going to do with the nitrogen? Nitrogen is not going to become a nitroxide to breathe out. That's not how it's done. It's actually this nitrogen your body need to get rid of as a form of amino. Okay, and then this amine need to convert it to urea. And how do your body get rid of urea is through kidney. Okay, and so that as a result, it put a lot of pressure on the kidneys work, kidney to work to get rid of those urea in the urine. And oftentimes that when you try to get a urine, you pull a lot of water with it, and then that's why a lot of time that the ketogenic diet, the high protein, low carb diet, that's how you lose weight, is you're pulling a lot of water out of you. And versus if you have a lot of carbohydrates, and carbohydrates, those glycogens are holding a lot of water. And so you have to decide which one is more healthy. Okay, so 51 minutes. That's long enough. What do you think? Okay, we're looking forward to be back in their classroom with you. But at the meantime, have fun. Study protein. All right.